Hey, welcome back to the channel. I don't mean to disappoint, but we're not actually hunting domestic cattle today. However, you may find yourself following up a wounded black bear in the dense cedar swamps of the Northeast, or staring at the south end of a northbound bull moose up in the Yukon. Your hunting situation can go from the routine to rather urgent in a heartbeat. So that's why we're building this load. I call it the just in case load. Alright, so in the last couple of videos, we took the 35 Whelen Ackley Improved and we loaded the Hammer 196 grain HHT and essentially turned the 35 Whelen Ackley Improved into something that it really truly wasn't originally designed for, and that is a bona fide long range option for big game like elk. It actually matched ballistically and trajectory of 180 grain factory loaded Nosler AccuBond for the 300 Winchester Magnum out to 500 yards. Now in this video, we're actually going to the other end of the spectrum. We're going to go back to the roots of the 35 caliber rifle altogether. And we're loading and shooting the 310 grain Woodleigh Round Nose. When I'm talking about going back to the roots of the 35 caliber rifle and the 310 grain bullet, I wasn't thinking about or talking about the 35 Whelen. That came out in 1922. I'm not even talking about the 35 Winchester, which came out in 1903. I'm going back to 1899 when John Rigby introduced the 400-350 Nitro Express. That originally shot a 300 grain bullet at 2,000 feet a second. With more modern powder, that was bumped up to 2,150 feet a second. The 400-350 Nitro Express was a rimless case designed to be fired in the side-by-side express rifles and the single-shot rifles of that time. It was widely successful from 1899 to 1906 on every headed game in Africa, from your smallest plains game even up to your largest elephant and everything in between. But it was in 1906 that Otto Bach, the German rifle maker, came out with his 9.3x62 Mauser. That fired a 286 grain bullet, slightly faster than Rigby's 310 grain bullet. But not to be outdone, John Rigby took that 400-350 Nitro Express, removed the rim, bumped the shoulder up slightly, and that was called the 350 rimless, or what we now know as the 350 Rigby Magnum. And that was fired in the very first ever Mauser Magnum action that we know of today. And the 350 Rigby Magnum fired a 225 grain bullet at 2,625 feet a second. So as you can see, you're starting to see the progression from bigger, heavier bullets to lighter, faster, flatter shooting bullets. Although it seemed like people were going the direction of lighter bullets, higher velocity, flatter trajectory, not everybody bought into that philosophy for big game hunting, especially when it comes to dangerous game hunting. One of those guys was John Pondoro Taylor. He was a big game hunter in Africa. He spent 25 years hunting. And I didn't really quite understand this, but when he says 25 years, he means 25 years hunting. Where most of us will hunt 2-3 months out of the year, he hunted 10-11 months out of the year for 25 years, and it has accounted for all sorts of big game, including numerous elephants and other dangerous game. And he was a big fan of large bore or mid bore, heavy for caliber bullets at modest velocity for taking big game. And he spoke highly of the 350s, whether it's the original 400-350 Nitro Express or the 350 Rigby, in each of his books. In his book, African Rifles and Cartridges, Taylor had high praise for both the 400-350 Nitro Express and the 350 Rigby Magnum. For the 350 Rigby Magnum, it is a splendidly effective shell, and at ranges of up to at least 150 yards, kills just as instantaneously as the 375 Magnum. For the 400-350 Nitro Express, I have a very soft spot in my heart for this cartridge because when shooting it, I have secured some of my very best specimens, lion, buffalo, and my very best rhino, 27-incher, and 1 or 2 very big elephant. Personally, I consider the Rigby's original 350 makes a better all-around rifle than his modern Magnum for African use. There is no getting away from the fact that its 310 grain bullet hits a heavier punch on a head-on shot than does the 225 grain bullet thrown by the Magnum. It's true that I am principally thinking of elephant and possibly rhino and thick cover when I speak of its heavier bullet being preferable. As much as Taylor loved these two cartridges, he was unequivocally opposed of using them in dense cover for big game, dangerous game, especially when it comes to stopping a charge. He gives a couple examples of stories in his books. One in particular, the only thing that they found of the hunter was his boots and his feet that were in the boots. The rest of the hunter's body was ground into the dirt, and all you could see was a stain in the dirt. So it certainly has its limitations, and he knew that. So why was the 310 grain bullet so effective? It has everything to do with, and it's a term that we've all heard and we're all familiar with, sectional density. If you were to ask professional hunters of big game, dangerous game, what the minimum recommended sectional density is for their hunting bullet, they would tell you it's going to be 300 or .300. If you look at all your modern dangerous game cartridges today, whether it's your 375 H&H, your 375 Ruger, your 416 Rem Mag or Rigby or Ruger, your 458 Win Mag or 458 Lot, their most popular bullets are going to have a sectional density of at least 300. And if you look at the 310 compared to those, the 310 is actually at 346. And for those of you that shoot a 338-06, I'll just throw this in there for you. Woodleigh makes a 300 grain round nose, both soft point and solid, for the 338. And that has a sectional density of 375. So that is a good indicator at how well these bullets are going to penetrate. And it, again, has everything to do with its length compared to its diameter. So that's why that bullet and the 400 350 Nitro and the 350 Rigby Magnum were so successful. Okay, now that we've gone over kind of the genesis of the 35 caliber hunting rifle and why it works so well, I just want to give you a bit of context as to why I wanted to try the 310 grain bullet out of my 35 Whelen Ackley Improved. So let's look at the load data. In front of us we have the Woodleigh reloading manual. On the left, you got your 35 Whelen 310 grain round nose, soft nose. And on the right, you have the original 400 350 Nitro Express and the 350 Rigby Magnum. We used RL17 for this load. They have a starting load of 51 and a max load of 58 with a top end of 2,215 feet per second. I actually started at 52 grains. And load 1, 2, 3, and 4, I went up by 1 grain increments. Load 5, 6, 7, and 8, I went up by half grain increments. And load 9, 10, 11, and 12, I went up by 3/10 of a grain, ending at 58.2. So the only thing I don't know is what barrel length Woodleigh used to test this data in the 35 Whelen. Based on what you're about to see, I'm guessing it was quite a bit shorter than the 26-inch barrel that I have. Alright, so this is the rifle. It was originally a Remington 700 CDL in 35 Whelen. But again, I really wanted something a bit different, so we sent it off to ER Shaw, and they put a 26-inch barrel chambered in 35 Whelen Ackley Improved. Alright, so right out of the gate with that first load, I was quite surprised, and I'll tell you why. we had a starting load of 52.0. The book starting load for the 35 Whelen is 51. They have a starting velocity of 1890. Because this is the Ackley improved case and it's got more case volume, I expected somewhere between 1900 and 1950 feet per second. The 3-shot average for the first group came in at 2,137 feet per second, 150 plus feet a second faster than what I was anticipating. So let's just jump up to the fourth and final load that we shot. Now, we only shot 4 loads out of 12, and I'll tell you why in a minute here. But the fourth and final load had a 3-shot average of 2,315 feet per second. We stopped there for a couple of reasons. Reason number 1, we were a full 3 grains below the maximum book load for the 35 Whelen. Because this is the Ackley improved case, theoretically, we should have been able to go above the book load for the 35 Whelen. That's why my final load was about 0.2 of the grain over max. But we stopped a full 3 grains short because our velocity was 100 feet a second faster already than what the book was saying we should be getting for the standard 35 Whelen. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Those pressures, if we would have continued to go further, those pressures would have continued to climb higher than what we probably should have been shooting. The other reason why we stopped, and it wasn't because of a stiff bolt lift, it wasn't because of a cratered primer, an extractor mark, or any of that. Even the case head didn't measure large at all. We stopped because the gain that we were getting per grain of powder added had diminished greatly. What do I mean by that? Group 2 over Group 1, so 52 to 53 grains of powder, we gained 114 feet a second. From 52 grains of powder to 53 grains of powder, we went from 114 feet per second down to 53 feet per second for that incremental change. And then lastly, from 53 grains of powder to 54 grains of powder, we had a 3-shot average that was only 9 feet per second greater than the previous load. So we went from 114 foot a second increase down to 9 feet a second increase in a matter of 3 grains, because we stopped at 55.0. So in 3 grains, we went from 114 feet per second down to 9 feet per second change in velocity. So at that point, to me, just by adding more powder, we weren't going to see much more than what we're already getting. And frankly, at 2,300 feet a second, that accomplished one of my goals, and that was to duplicate the ballistics, the original ballistics of the 400-350 Nitro. The second goal I had, and I was really pleased to see that we accomplished it, and that was I wanted to learn if the 1 14-inch twist in this barrel was going to be fast enough to stabilize those big, long 310 grain round nose. And by looking at the targets, although the groups were pretty terrible except for number 4, that one measured about an inch, actually just under an inch. Those holes were nice and crisp and round. They weren't oblong or keyholed. So that's telling me that this barrel does have a fast enough twist to stabilize that 310 grain bullet. So at the end of the day, I'm really pleased. I am absolutely floored that we're able to push this big heavy bullet like that out of this rifle. And I know John Pondoro would be pleased too. So coming up, we've got my daughter's upcoming bear hunt this fall. Actually, she hasn't drawn a tag yet, but we're pretty positive she will. So we've got some load development coming up for her 6.5 Creedmoor, and looking forward to doing that. We got some more 358 videos coming. We've got some more 35 Whelen content coming. So, man, if you really like this and you enjoy this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. I'd greatly appreciate it. And I can't wait to see you next time on 358 Outdoors. God bless.